So be one of the 1% that says, I could actually get to that level, and just watch what happens. Just watch how you bring it to life.
How would it change your life if you knew how to build and scale a 7-figure e-commerce business? Well, today I'm joined by Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and somebody who's done just that. We're going to be diving into the exact method that he used and also cover the challenges that he faced on his journey to scaling to 7 figures so that we can discover the 5-step process to running and owning a 7-figure dropshipping business. So, Lewis, I'm sure there'll be a listener out there that's intrigued and likes the idea of owning a 7-figure e-commerce business themselves. Well, what is the first thing that they would need to consider?
Well, the first thing would be having a clear business model, but it goes without saying that you'd also need to put in consistent efforts to reach that 7-figure mark, but it's definitely attainable. There are multiple success stories that serve as proof, including my own. So I think the first thing you need to consider if you want to reach this goal is whether you have the right mindset. So it's easy to write off mindset as something that, I don't need to worry about mindset. I just need the strategies. But really, with anything like this, I think in a sense, you have to be delusionally optimistic. And I say that because you have to almost be, when society thinks one way, you have to think differently. Because if you thought the same as the masses, you would think, well, I would never be able to achieve it. What would make me special and be able to stand out? And I hear this time and time again, speaking to people who are maybe in 9-to-5 jobs who think, why would I be able to achieve this? And I think it comes down to a level of, it's almost like a selective advantage that entrepreneurs have. And you can train yourself to have this. It's not something you're born with. You can learn this skill. But a quote from Tim Ferriss, I think, sums this up really nicely. So really take this one to heart and remember this. He said in one of his blog posts, it's not kind of a famous quote or anything, but he says, it's lonely at the top. 99% of the world is convinced they are incapable of achieving great things. So they aim for the mediocre middle ground. If you let that sink in and think that is like society in a nutshell, most people assume that having a 7-figure business is crazy and way outside their reach. So instead they aim for the 50 grand a year business, right? And therefore it's really competitive at that level. But if you do aim for the top, there aren't that many people who have the guts, the self-belief, the self-confidence to just go for it. And so you find when you reach that point with consistency, I'm not saying it's a walk in the park. Of course, it's not easy, but if you really push yourself to get there, and you have that mindset, which is the foundation for success in this business, because it will be a rocky road ahead. It will be a bumpy journey. You will have to overcome obstacles. But if you have an unshakable mindset and you're ready to tackle those challenges as and when they're presented to you, you're unstoppable, right? So I think it's just making sure that you're competing for the top. Therefore, it won't be that competitive when you get there, because most people will have given up before they even got there because they thought, well, I would never be able to reach that level. So be one of the 1% that says, I could actually get to that level, and just watch what happens. Just watch how you bring it to life.
So I'm not surprised that you've gone straight to mindset as the first step on that path. I think 80% of your business growth is down to the mindset you have, and the other 20% is the tactical things that you pick up along the way.
Yeah, exactly. So building a 7-figure business requires that mindset shift, as most people don't inherently have the belief of, they don't have the internal dialogue of, if others can do it, why can't I? And I think that's something that I take for granted, because that is a belief I have. I see something out there. Like when I first talk about sitting in the grey, dull corporate meeting room and looking out the window and thinking, there are other people running e-commerce businesses out there, and I'm sure they didn't have all the answers when they started. Why couldn't I? And maybe that was something that I learned through reading personal development books. I don't know, but I think that's the thing that carries you through, because when you're tested along the way, you have to have your eyes on the end goal and think, I can get there because other people have got there. So why can't I? They figured out the problems. I'm willing to figure out those problems along the way too, because I know the rewards are worthwhile and will change the course of my life. So it's a worthwhile, couple of years of frustration to get to the point where you have abundance forevermore. So when I was at school, there's a great example of this. My cousin, who's about the same age as me, he just got a guitar for Christmas, right? And I remember going to see him one day, and he played the James Bond theme tune, that like dun 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 dun. And I was like, that is so cool that he's able to do that on the guitar. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, how has he figured out how to play the guitar? That's amazing. Now there's a fork in the road at this point. I could have thought, oh, he's a guitar player. He can play the guitar. That's awesome. Good for him. I'd never be able to do that. That's the view of other people can do something I can't. Instead, I took the view of thinking, well, I want to learn to play the guitar as well. So I immersed myself in guitars. I worked in a guitar shop throughout school as like a part-time job on Saturdays and Sundays. I took lessons. I I was in a band, I did everything. And then when I got to senior school, because of the work that I'd put in, that foundational hard work and consistency, I was able to fund my social life through senior school by teaching guitar to local children in the area. I'd go around and teach them guitar for an hour and earn 30 quid or something. And so I think the reason I say that is because it's the same with e-commerce. I could have just looked at my cousin and thought, oh, wow, he's special. He can play the guitar. He must have a special talent, like the story you tell yourself about other e-commerce entrepreneurs' ability to achieve something. Or you have that self-confidence and say, I think I could do that. You have that self-belief, that grit, determination, whatever you call it, to say, I'm going to make it. And it's difficult on your own as well, because you have those internal doubts and voices telling you, maybe you're not cut out for this. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe you're not, as good as them. And so I think that's why it's particularly important to surround yourself with a like-minded group of people as well, because as well as having that strong mindset, you need to be surrounded by people. So obviously that's why we've created Dropship Unlocked as well. And then alongside that, as well as having a strong mindset, there are of course some tactical considerations which we'll dive into in this episode. So really the foundations being, you need to set yourself up from the start to ensure that you have a scalable operation. So things like registering a limited company, having a separate business bank account set up, having standard operating procedures like step-by-step task breakdowns for all of the processes in your business. Things like that are of course important, as well as just having the right mindset.
That's right. And all of those tactical things that you need to grow and scale a 7-figure business can all come after you've got the mindset in place. And it sounds like from those guitar lessons, those guitar days when you were growing up, that mindset was instilled in you from the start, that when you see somebody that's achieved some level of success, you don't write off the fact that you could ever do it. Instead, you just realize that he must have just learnt it. He's got, it's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And this talk about mindset, it reminds me of a study they did on the most successful self-made millionaires. And they looked at what are the most important traits that they have and the common traits among them all. And it was this brilliant paradox where the one trait was that they had was this hole within them that needed to be filled. They needed to achieve success. So they needed it. It was like a desperation. And then the other side of it, another trait they had was that they also had this belief, this, like you say, this delusional belief that they were absolutely going to get there. And having those two, the need to win and also the belief, and having both of those, that's going to set you up for success.